Hello and welcome to this edition of Dr. Clark Reports. I'm your host, Gary Clark, and my guest today is my friend and former colleague, also the former mayor of the city of New Orleans, Mayor Sidney Barthelemy. And Mayor Sidney Barthelemy, greetings and welcome, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Clark. I really appreciate the invitation to come by and look forward to having a nice chat about politics in the city of New Orleans.
Yes, sir. How have you been?
I've been very good. Thank you for asking. I'm thank God, knock on wood and everything. I think I'm doing okay physically. I have a few aches and pains, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Well, that's all of us, and
yeah.
and you're over at HRI, and tell us what's going on there right now.
Well, HRI right now, we're one of the 3 finalists that are being considered for Charity Hospital. Our vision is hopefully to be able to create in Charity Hospital a very vibrant and active program. Particularly, we're suggesting that maybe it would be a good place for a public entity such as city government and the civil district courts. So that's going to be an option that we're going to put on the table and talk about with the people making the decision.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, it seems though it could it could be a great option.
Oh,
I would think.
It really would be, and then we're not only talking about charity, but we're talking about the whole neighborhood. The neighborhood of Charity Hospital in downtown New Orleans, where we believe we can bring retail shopping in downtown and enhance that neighborhood around Canal Street that once was a very vibrant retail area when we were young. Canal Street was the place that everyone went to shop with our major stores, D.H. Holmes and Maison
Krause's,
Blanche,
all of that, yes.
and all of the other stores, Krause and a couple of others I can't think of. La Beach is buy nice suits for reasonable cost.
Well, land management and in particular land use, all this is so important now, especially in an urban area, is it not?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's very important, because really the innovative thinking today is coming out of the cities. I mean, most of the cities you find where the economy is really doing better than it did historically in the recent past. And also they're being revitalized, and they have many really good mayors that are now the politicians who are making things happen, whereas, what's happening in many legislators and in the federal government, there's conflict and roadblocks and nothing is happening, but the cities, things are beginning to happen.
Right, and I know that and there's always been such a great conflict in America, and in particular in our state, between this rural and urban divide.
Right.
Unnecessarily.
Right. And I must say, when I was mayor, Governor Edwards was the governor, and we had a good relationship, and he helped bring the casino to New Orleans, which has really been very good. In fact, I don't think people realize that the city of New Orleans gets around $20 million from the casino operations. And the other thing was the basketball arena. He and I agreed that if we had an arena, we could bring a pro basketball team back, because we had the Jazz, and we lost the Jazz because they went to Utah. And I was asking the governor for help to build that arena, and said, I think, Governor, if we got the arena, we'll be able to attract a basketball team, a professional team again, because we'll have an incentive to offer one of the teams. And so we were lucky. We did build the arena, and we were able to get the Hornets.
Well, that's what do you say? The old adage, build it,
and they will come.
Yes, sir.
And it sure happens.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned your mayorship. Will you talk about some of the accomplishments that you viewed and that you had under your tenure, and also how you view the mayor's office itself. Yes, sir.
Well, you know, I mentioned already
Yes.
the casino, and I mentioned the basketball arena, the aquarium that we
Yes.
did on the riverfront. And, you know, when I was elected, it was very, very difficult time because we had unemployment like 13%. And the critical need was jobs. And I mean, I would meet people all the time and they'd say, Mayor, my kid has to leave the city. You know, we have to have jobs. And that's one of the reasons I pushed for the casino, you know. And we were able to create about 2,000 jobs with that project. And then the basketball arena, again, we created many jobs. And the aquarium was also a job producer. So we did pretty good with no money. And we were able to survive budget-wise. I mean, when I came in, we had a $30 million deficit, and we had to do some hard things, like we went on a 4-day work week. Everybody in City Hall worked 4 days, so in a sense, we all took a loss in our salaries by 20%. And the mayor and the council started off first. We said, if all of us are going to suffer, or if the city employees are going to suffer, then the politicians ought to suffer too. And so all of us gave up a day's pay in order to balance the budget.
A lot of folks don't remember that, don't recall that, don't know the kind of sacrifice that took place with during that particular period that you made.
No, they don't. And you know, everybody suffered, and we closed down City Hall on Friday so that the citizens also lost a day that they could come to City Hall and do business. And we thought it was fair that everybody, because of the situation we were in, had to do a little sacrificing. And we all did. We survived. We were able to come up and do creative financing and raise enough money so that we went back around Christmas time to a full 5-day work week, and people had a full salary, and so Christmas was a good time.
Well, I do know that there are certain constitutional mandates, but what do you view as the principal role of the mayor, the chief executive officer for the city? Yes, sir.
Well, he is the chief executive order, and one of the major things he has to do is provide services to people. I mean, to me, that is why all of us at that time ran for office, was to help people. I mean, today it's almost as if it's a bad thing to help people. I mean, you look at the federal government and this administration and you see their attitude is not to help people, you know, and I mean, that is anathema to most of us who lived in that time and saw politics as a way to provide service to your community, to provide help to the people, to help them with, we had well baby clinics so that young babies could get help and have health, and also get milk and other needs that they may have had. And they were all over the city, so you didn't have to go just down to Charity. You could go to the city's well baby clinics. And then we had social services that we provided in the neighborhood centers, community centers. So, you know, we all saw that as the reason for our existence was to serve the people. And the reason for city government was pick up the garbage and keep the city clean and provide security with policemen, provide security with fire department to make sure that, you know, lives were protected. And that's what we saw in those days as the responsibility of city government.
And the number one opposition, or should I say the most difficulty that you had as mayor, what was the most difficult thing that you faced?
Well, you know, the budget, trying to balance the budget and make sure that the people got services, even though they had to be limited for a while until we got a full budget. But in those days, the city's budget was like $300 million, and today the city's budget is over $600 million. So they have much more money than we had in those days. So we had to do it smartly and do it wisely, and have people who I always looked for people who were interested in providing service and help. And the departments, like the NORD programs, yes. And we had Dolores Aaron, who did a fabulous job, and you might remember she was director of NORD. And we had programs all over the city, and ball teams, basketball teams, football teams,
right.
baseball teams, And we were able to get the business community to help us fix up many of our parks that were deteriorating, and so they spent their money to bring the parks up to par so that the kids could enjoy the parks and do positive things, And it was really a cooperative venture that we had. So the budget was one thing, and then trying to create jobs, trying to get activities down in City Hall and in the city of New Orleans. Like, for the first time, we were able to get a major political convention in New Orleans, and that's the first and only time in all of these years.
Yeah.
So we were able to get the Republican convention to
with
come.
Bob Dole and company. That's when he was nominated. Yes.
Right. And they, everybody participated. We had a 300 voice choir for the prayer breakfast, and from the whole metropolitan area. And my wife managed that project for us and did a fabulous job. And they were, even the Republicans would dance to our music, because we used all of our stars, Irma Thomas and Aaron Neville, and all of the other, Pete Fountain, and all of the famous musicians we had. And people didn't know how good our music was until we had that prayer breakfast, and they really enjoyed it. And so that was a very positive thing, and we brought a lot of money there. And of course, wherever we could get a major league game, we were able to get a Super Bowl, and we were able to get other kinds of venues. We also were able to get the trials for the Olympics. The trials for the Olympics was held in New Orleans.
Right, and that improved City Park.
And we were able to raise money to improve City Park, and many of the assets that we created then are still in existence at City Park. And we did a whole new stadium, what to call it, a turf.
Right.
We had a turf, and the track we improved. And it was really exciting because, many of the people who participated in the trials went on to the Olympics, and we got a chance to see all the Olympic stars.
Now, your temperament of leadership, how do you characterize your temperament of leadership?
Well, my temperament, I guess, was more about inclusiveness and cooperation. I've always believed, and maybe it's because of the way I was raised, my parents always said you can catch more bees with honey or more flies with honey than with vinegar, And so I always believe that by working together and cooperating with people, you can get more done. And even if you don't have all of the money, you still could get things done by working together, by cooperating, and by assisting each other. And that was my philosophy, and it seemed to have paid off. I think we had a great relationship with the state. We were able to get, without Governor Edwards, I couldn't have done the things that we did. And then the federal government. Lindy Boggs was our congressperson, And she was wonderful they respected her in
She had
Washington.
seniority and
she had
power.
Seniority, right. And her approach was the same way. She'd use her charm to get, because there were few women in those days that were in Congress, but she was able to get us all the help that we really needed from Washington. Washington saw their role also as assisting us, and with somebody like Lindy, and we also had two senators who were excellent also, who had power and seniority. We had Russell Long and Bennett Johnston and John Breaux. Those were the legislators that we had.
A powerful delegation.
Oh, it was very powerful.
Billy Tozan and all those people.
Right,
yes.
and they served as chairs, like Russell Long was chair of the Finance Committee. And really, I don't know if people realize it, but Russell Long really was responsible for us getting the Saints football team because the NFL had to go to Congress to pass legislation so they wouldn't be considered a monopoly. And he said there's the only way you can pass the legislation, because they had to go through his committee, was if New Orleans gets an NFL franchise. And really, that's how we were able to get a franchise for New Orleans. Russell Long.
Through Russell Long and the power that he...
The power he had as chair of the Senate.
Yes, sir. And again, I'm Gary Clark, and I'd like to remind my viewers that I'm speaking with my longtime friend and former colleague over at Xavier University, the former mayor of the city of New Orleans, Sidney Barthelemy. And yes, sir, we all know that you're a native of the city and that you're a product of our community, but will you please tell my viewing audience the Sidney Barthelemy story?
Well,
yes, sir.
I grew up in New Orleans, and I went to school in New Orleans, and I'm a graduate of St. Augustine High School. And at some point during that high school formation, I thought maybe I might want to have a religious profession, and I went to the seminary. I was studying to be a priest. And I spent 7 years in the seminary, and I found out I didn't have a vocation. It's like anything. Some things are for you and some things are not.
Absolutely.
And I always say God had a real sense of humor, because I wasn't able to be a priest, but he sent me into the political arena, so I figured he had to have a sense of humor to do that. But after I left the seminary, I came to New Orleans, and I worked in the poverty program. At that time, there was a program that was started by John F. Kennedy, who was president of the United States at the time. And he started the CAP program, the Community Action Programs, and all over the country. And in New Orleans, we got a significant, once again, our congressional delegation had significant power, and they made sure that the city was included and that we got a significant amount of money. And Head Start started there, job training started there. We had 6 neighborhood centers in the communities: Lower Nine, Desire, Irish Channel, Central City, Algiers.
Wow.
And all of those centers were very active and had all kinds of service. We had social services as well as training, counseling, even started credit unions.
And that's important. That was yes.
Right. I mean, because the concept was to try and assist people so that they can have meaningful lives and not struggle every day in poverty. And it really succeeded. And the other thing that it did that's hardly ever talked about was that many of the political leaders came from the poverty program, because segregation existed in those days, and so there were not that many jobs, particularly as executives, as leaders of programs and departments. except in TCA. And Jim Singleton was a neighborhood president. Sherman Copeland was a director of the junior program for kids to learn training. Hank Braden, Thomas was Jasper.
Oh yes, that's right.
Jasper.
When became state representative.
State representative.
Yes.
Johnny Jackson was a community organizer for Desire. He became a state representative. Louis Charbonnet was active in the Tremé area, and he became a state representative. And I was elected to the Senate from the 6th and 7th Wards. So, and all of us worked in the poverty program in one form or another. Many people served on the boards. Dorothy Mae Taylor was very active in the Central City neighborhood community development program. So it really helped to develop leadership in many of us. And Clarence Jupiter, who I worked for at TCA, wound up being the development director at Xavier University,
Sure,
where we
right.
were
Yes,
at that
in that
time.
period.
You know, and many of us went in further, you know, because we were able to get that experience in executive positions and move on to bigger and better things. And you know, it was an attitude of service once again. The poverty program was there to serve the neighborhood, to serve the community. And it not only helped us to learn to provide services and to provide assistance to people, but it learned and taught us that politics was extremely important in the development of our communities, because in many cases we were shut out of the political arena and shut out of the services because we had no representation. And you know, there were no black members on the city council. It wasn't until
A.L. Davis.
A.L. Davis.
Reverend A.L. Davis.
Got
yes.
on the scene. He was the first black councilman, and Dutch Morial was the first black legislator when he was elected to the House. And Dorothy Taylor followed him, and Johnny Jackson, and Louis Charbonnet, and Tom Jasper, and all of the rest.
Well, and on that same vein, who were individuals that influenced you along the way, your personal and professional influences?
Well, all of the people that I named,
Yeah.
you know, once again, because of my experience in TCA, you know, Clarence Jupiter, as I mentioned, Dr. Francis, they had Dr. Cook at Dillard University, Celestine Cook, who was at Good Citizen. I mean, all of those were leaders at the time. And Blaine Dejoie at the Peoples, and Christoph from the Peoples. And all of those folks, you know, were really leaders in the community. And so we all learned from them and how to survive, particularly in a segregated system, and how to bring about the changes so that we would be able to participate on different levels in the political arena and then in the business community. And those were the kinds of leaders that we had. And of course, Martin Luther King on a national level was very, very important to all of us, you know, because he was out there on the front line of fighting segregation. And, you know, he had such courage that it influenced all of us who wound up getting into positions of leadership and into political positions. And he taught us that, you know, you fight the system with love, and you fight the system with demonstrating, and you fight the system to bring about the changes, and everybody had a role.
Well, I know that, that your background in social work.
Right.
I think that is so inherently important in a sense in terms of how you manage the city. Because you brought a certain component to the city, and in terms of your management and what you expected services. And do you think that's? I see it as important. And I remind people of that all the time.
It was very
Yes.
important at the time. You know, I was very fortunate that I was able to go to Tulane and get into the Master of Social Work program. And it did, you know, my specialty was community organization, you know. Incidentally, so was Barack Obama. He was a community organizer.
Yes.
And that's what, at that time, you know, social work offered me an opportunity to learn. And then to demand the services for people. I mean, we want to make sure that everybody is taken care of, not the system that they have now, you know, where they try and hurt poor people because they don't have any money, but a system that in those days tried to help people, wanted to assist them, wanted to provide education, wanted to provide social services. And all of that really came through my experience with the education of social worker.
Well, I want to address this because the rubric of leadership that you talk about now, individuals who came out of the civil rights experience and that experience, that social consciousness experience, we have leaders now, and we have folks who are coming into power now, who do not come from that. We just have 2 minutes remaining, but if you could address that,
I mean,
leadership.
you know, like I said, leadership was seen as a service opportunity. I mean, you know, not a power opportunity. You know, I never.
Yes.
I never felt that I wanted to be elected mayor to have power over people. I saw running for office, and many of the people who I served with felt that we ran for office to serve. And at that time, that was leadership, you know, and you would fight the negative people to provide services to our community. And you had to do it because there was nobody else to do it. And all of my colleagues that I mentioned earlier today that serve in public office, you know, that was the mantra.
And your vision for the city of New Orleans?
My vision is hopefully we can do more programs so that everybody can celebrate and participate. You know, we create more jobs, we create more opportunity. This is the greatest country in the world. Why we believe we don't have to provide opportunities for people is beyond me. That's why America is here.
Absolutely. And again, I want to thank you for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure, Dr.
And I want to thank my viewers for tuning in. And as always, it's been a pleasure. We need to reach back.